Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
It doesn't mean anything, does it? I found that note in her bag while she was in the shower. A small piece of paper, folded in half, shoved into the corner pocket of the worn leather purse she always carried. The letters were in a hurried, slanted scrawl. Nothing like her usual neat, looping handwriting. And it felt so foreign, so awkward to stand there in our bedroom, the sound of running water behind the closed bathroom door, reading words not meant for me. I wish I could say I felt something dramatic right away. A punch in the gut, a wave of rage, maybe even heartbreak. But I didn't. Instead, I felt nothing. Not a numbness exactly, but a peculiar kind of quiet, like the stillness that settles before a thunderstorm. I kept thinking, over and over, that phrase in Russian, "Ito ved nichego ne значит," and ironically, it was the one phrase I'd learned from her grandmother that stuck. It echoed in my mind, refusing to leave me, as though repeating it often enough might turn it into truth. I put the note back. My hands weren't even shaking. It read, "Missed you today. Next time, my place. M." That was it. An initial and a sentiment, so simple yet so loaded with everything she and I had never said to each other. I remember tucking the paper exactly where I found it, making sure it looked untouched. Then I forced a casual expression onto my face, as if I'd merely been checking her purse for a loose key. She came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, hair damp, wrapped in a large white towel. The smell of her shampoo, lavender, and something floral mingled with the stale air of our bedroom. Her eyes skimmed over me, and I could almost see the wheels turning behind that placid expression of hers. But she said nothing, and I said nothing. A conversation unsaid, a hush thick in the corners of the room. And I realized, with a clarity that stung, that I'd been living in a hush for months, maybe even years. I'm not sure if that was the moment I decided to keep silent. But from that point on, I let everything swirl around me. Her sudden bursts of cheerfulness, her unexplained lateness, her girls' nights, until the day the entire facade collapsed. I'd spent so long ignoring the signals, turning a blind eye because I thought maybe this was just a phase, that couples go through ups and downs, that we were just one more complicated story in a complicated world. But you can't outrun reality forever. We'd been married for almost a decade. We'd met when I was 32, already working in finance, already tired of corporate dinners and business suits. She was bright and full of ideas. Catherine, though she insisted I call her Kate. She was finishing her degree in international relations at the time, and I was bewitched by her energy, her spontaneity, her way of making every moment feel like something worth celebrating. She used to organize little parties for my birthday, or for no reason at all. Surprises in the form of homemade cupcakes or tickets to see my favorite football team. We laughed at how we'd grow old together, teased each other about silly quirks. Somewhere between that beginning and this note, everything changed. She took up event planning. She thrived on the hustle. Phone calls, brimming notepads, color-coded schedules. It was fascinating at first to watch her come alive in that environment. Then her unstoppable momentum turned her away from me. I guess I sank deeper into my work too. By the time she started shifting her schedule around for business dinners or friends' gatherings, I was barely asking questions, just letting it happen as if passivity was the only way to maintain peace. But that day with the note, I remember it so vividly. The dim golden light filtering in through the bedroom window, the faint whir of the air conditioner. The day before had been bitterly cold, and the sky over Chicago threatened snow. Everything was tinted in a pale, dying yellow, and I found myself noticing the color like it was part of a film scene. Too saturated, too dramatic. I wanted to blame the color for making me feel uneasy, but in truth I was uneasy because I sensed the iceberg beneath my feet was cracking. I let it go, though. Put the note back, told myself I needed more proof, that I shouldn't accuse her blindly. She was my wife. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe M was a coworker. But some primal part of me knew better. You can always tell when your partner's heart drifts. The air around them changes. The next few days, I busied myself with life's routines. We had tickets to the Super Bowl, 2 tickets I'd fought to get my hands on. It was supposed to be a big moment for me, for us. Something we rarely did: travel, watch the game, enjoy a weekend away, ignoring everything else. That was my plan, my grand gesture to rekindle a spark. She had a different plan. She told me casually, as she walked past me in the living room, that she needed the tickets for her friends, that they'd been planning some group outing to the game, that she wanted to go with them. "It's just one day," she said. "Don't give me that look. It's not like you'll miss much, right? You can watch from home." I felt a tightness in my chest. She wasn't asking, she was taking, and the words lodged in my throat. I wanted to say so many things, that it was unfair, that I'd hoped to spend that day with her, that we needed time together. But I said nothing. My silence roared between my ears. She stared at me for a moment, waiting for an objection that never came, then took the tickets from the table. "I'll owe you," she said in a teasing voice, as if trying to disarm me. "Next year, we can go together." She didn't see my hand clenching. She didn't notice how my jaw muscles bunched, or if she did, she pretended not to. Maybe she was too caught up in her own world, in her own fantasies. I remember how the corner lamp in our living room cast a gentle glow, yellowish, across her face, creating the soft halo that felt profoundly ironic. She gave me a small smile, a smile that used to make me melt, but now felt like a dagger. And that was the moment I knew she'd won. She had no idea how or why, but she had beaten me. She claimed the last bit of my hope, torn it like a fragile piece of paper. The next day, I came home from work to find her phone lying on the couch. A faint bluish light from the screen flickered in the dusk. She was in the shower again. She often was at that time, as if washing away the day's tension. Normally, I would have ignored her phone, but something compelled me to glance at it. The display was lit with a string of notifications. By then, I was past the point of moral hesitation. I picked it up, unlocked it. Her passcode had never changed, and what I saw left no room for illusions. It was more than just messages. It was photos, videos, her and him, naked, tangled in each other, unguarded, explicit and raw. My stomach twisted as I scrolled, each image hammering home a single truth. There was no misunderstanding. I could almost taste the cheap cologne, the sweat, the deception. And through my absolute silence, I felt the coldness in my veins. It was not a numbness, but the slow freeze of heartbreak turning into rage. The pictures told me everything I refused to believe, everything I needed to see. Her parted lips, her closed eyes, the slight arch of her spine against him. The talk about the timestamps told me how recent it was. This hadn't been a single mistake. It was an ongoing affair, a living thing right under my nose. I closed my eyes, exhaled, and placed her phone back exactly as I'd found it. I remember standing there in the living room, the only light coming from the phone's screen, and the dull blue haze of twilight seeping through the curtains. A swirl of dust motes caught in the faint glow. The stillness was unholy, like the universe held its breath, waiting for me to do something. Scream, throw her phone against the wall, confront her. Instead, I walked to the bedroom, locked the door behind me, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. All I know is that a creeping sense of calm enveloped me, a readiness, a strange acceptance. Later that night, when she came out in her towel again, I pretended not to notice how her hair was damp, how her eyes were bright from a fresh wash. I simply slipped past her to take my own shower. And we didn't speak, not a single word. That's how it began, the final unraveling. Quiet, impossibly quiet. In the days that followed, I set a plan into motion. I wasn't entirely conscious of my plan at first. It unfolded from a deeper place of betrayal, a place that demands restitution. I felt a tight coil in my stomach every time I saw her. She'd hum to herself, flip through magazines, text her lover. Probably. Meanwhile, I was biding my time, letting her walk around as though everything was normal, letting her keep the illusion that I was too stupid or naive to notice what was right in front of me. In a way, there was a dark satisfaction in that. I was giving her no reason to suspect anything had changed. She likely assumed I was just the same old me, turning a blind eye, comfortable in the routines of a marriage grown stale. But inside, I was forging my revenge. In the financial sense, I knew exactly how to lock her out. I'd consolidated our credit cards some months ago. My name was on most of the important accounts. She had her own personal card, but ironically, that was funded from our joint account. She was oblivious to how easily I could sever that line. As for her phone, she was dependent on the plan I paid for. I simply had to make a call. I wanted to see how she'd react when her calls, her texts, her online life were cut off, especially if she was planning a rendezvous with him. A day before I pulled the trigger on all that, there was a family gathering. Her parents, her aunt, one of my cousins, and a few other relatives. We were supposed to have dinner at a quiet place near the suburbs. She insisted I come. Actually, she said it in that tone that implied if I didn't show, it would look suspicious. So I went, wearing my usual polite face, trying to swallow the bitterness lodged in my throat. During dinner, the lights of the restaurant were a warm, flickering yellow. Soft music played overhead while we tried to make small talk about everything except the tangible tension. Her mother, an elegant woman with clipped diction, asked us how we were, how our life was going, if we had any big plans. Kate kept glancing at me as though expecting me to jump in. I just gave short, measured answers, feeling the sting every time I heard her voice. She tried to hold my hand beneath the table once, and I recoiled before I could stop myself. Her mother noticed but said nothing, her face betraying only a flicker of unease. Kate forced a cheery note in front of them. "We're thinking about taking a trip soon," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Somewhere warm, maybe after the Super Bowl." "Right, honey?" She looked at me, eyes pleading for me to back up her story. I stared back, noticing how the yellow overhead light turned her hair almost golden, how her forced smile was like a mask slipping off and reattaching. I glanced around at the curious, half-innocent faces of her family, my own cousin sipping from his wineglass, half expecting a typical conversation about future vacations. I spoke calmly, though my voice sounded distant even to myself. "We'll see," I said, forcing a tight smile. "A lot can change in just a few days. Sometimes more than you expect." She blinked, and I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. An unspoken challenge passed between us, like we were on a stage, performing for the relatives, but actually battling each other behind the scenes. She tried to salvage the moment with another bright comment, but the hush that followed was awkward. Her mother changed the subject, inquiring about my job. I gave mechanical responses. The rest of the dinner was a blur of tension. Kate's cheeks were flushed, as if the entire night had turned suffocating. I didn't volunteer a single piece of warmth. In the car on the way home, she snapped. "What the hell was that about?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Why are you acting like you're mad at me in front of my family?" I didn't respond at first. We drove through the Chicago streets, dark, with passing pools of streetlight flickering across the windshield. She pressed again. "John, talk to me. You've been a ghost lately." I kept my gaze on the road, the swirl of city lights. And then I said, quietly, "I think you know exactly why." She fell silent. I could almost taste her fear, or maybe it was guilt. We didn't speak another word until we pulled into our garage. She marched inside, slammed the door behind her. I followed at a measured pace, turning off the car lights, taking a moment to calm my breathing. My heart thudded painfully, but I refused to let her see me unhinge. By the time I stepped into the living room, she'd already retreated into the kitchen, rummaging for something in the fridge, probably a bottle of wine. I heard the faint clink of glass, The pop of a cork. I didn't give her a chance to start a fight. I just went to the bedroom, shut the door, and stared at the ceiling. Hours passed in the darkness. I replayed the images I'd seen on her phone, the note in her purse, the last few months of her withdrawing. I thought about how it all started. Her asking for the Super Bowl tickets, dismissing me so easily. And then I wondered if she'd go to him that night, if she was texting him right now. The thought made my gut twist. But I decided, tomorrow, I'd act. Morning came, pale and blue, and I felt no more kindness in my chest. I pretended everything was normal, ate a quick breakfast in silence. She shot me accusing glances from across the table, but I ignored them. After she left for a meeting, I picked up my phone and made the calls. First to the credit card company, then to the phone provider. I canceled or froze everything in her name. Changed passwords to the streaming services. Anything connected to my finances, I locked down. Then I took the spare key to her car, bought with my credit, after all, and decided I'd keep it somewhere else. Let her figure that out when the time came. I felt no triumph, only that same quiet. Cold, like the final days of a bleak winter. I'd always imagined that if something like this happened, I'd be raging, cursing, demanding. But the betrayal had seeped so deeply into me that all that was left was a kind of low Arctic frost. Yes, I told myself, cold is still an emotion. It's a statement of finality, a boundary that warmth can't cross. That was how I felt. Unreachable. When she realized what was happening, it was late afternoon, and the sun was disappearing behind the skyline, painting everything in that dull, half-dead yellow again. I was in the living room, reading headlines on my laptop, or at least pretending to. She burst through the door, phone in hand, face flushed with anger and confusion. "Why isn't my card working?" she demanded. "I canceled it," I said without looking up. She blinked. You canceled my card. All of them. My phone data's not working either. I couldn't even call an Uber properly. I had to connect to Wi-Fi just to message. She paused abruptly, realizing what she was revealing. You had no right. I stood up, closed the laptop. Actually, I did. Everything is in my name. Do you remember that? I walked to the window, looked out at the darkening city. You realize it's over, don't you? She approached, shaking. What are you talking about? My voice was strangely calm, as though we were discussing a business deal gone south. The marriage, Kate. Us. It's done. She just stared, mouth slightly open, a flush creeping up her neck. You can't do this, she said, but her conviction faltered. What's gotten into you? I turned to face her. I saw the pictures, Kate. You and him. Don't you dare pretend you don't know who I'm talking about. She paled. Her eyes flickered with terror, then a flash of defiance. So you snooped. Great. That's real mature. That's how you handle problems. By shutting me out of everything. My laugh was dry, humorless. You're accusing me of immaturity. You stole my tickets to the biggest game of the year so you could parade around with your friends. You planned your life around secret encounters while I worked to keep this household afloat. And you have the nerve to talk about immaturity. She set her jaw. I needed space, John. You suffocate me sometimes. I needed something else. That last part stung more than I anticipated. But I didn't let it show. You got your something else. Now live with it. I made a mistake, she snapped, her eyes brimming with tears she tried to hide. People make mistakes. Mistake. I repeated quietly. Kate, this was a months-long affair with explicit pictures, a phone full of messages, a note in your purse. That's not a one-mic misstep. That's a whole second life. I took a breath. The hush in my chest threatened to break, but I forced it down. I'm done, Kate. She advanced as though she might try to touch me, but I stepped away. I saw the desperation contorting her features, as if she suddenly realized she'd gone too far. She tried to regain some control. We can talk this out. We'll fix it. I'll cut him off. We can do couples therapy. I just stared, letting the cold in my gaze answer her. She shrank back, tears now rolling, but she was too shocked to sob properly. She might have still thought a handful of apologies and sweet words would fix it. But I was past that. The silence dragged on until she began to tremble. "You can't just shut me out like this," she whispered, voice cracking. "We're married." I let a moment pass. Then I said, "Not anymore." The finality in my tone left no room for doubt. She stood there, speechless, while I turned away. It was perhaps the cruelest I'd ever been in my life, and part of me hated it. But a bigger part needed this, needed to see the life she'd built on lies crumble around her. I walked to the bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, and started throwing clothes inside. She followed, tears streaking her cheeks, her breath hitching. "Where are you going?" "Away," I said simply. She tried to stop me, grabbing my wrist. "Please, John, don't do this. We can fix it. We can talk." A million angry replies buzzed in my head, but I forced them down. I pulled my wrist free. "I've already blocked your access to my accounts," I told her. "I'll sort out the formalities through a lawyer. I'll cover whatever we legally share. But beyond that, you're on your own." She let out a half-strangled sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Then came that meltdown I'd expected, words tumbling from her in a frantic attempt to pin blame on me, to guilt me, to twist the narrative. She accused me of ignoring her needs, of letting our marriage wither, of being obsessed with work, of not being spontaneous enough, not paying enough attention, not making her feel alive. I didn't argue, because maybe some of that was true. But I no longer cared. Let her fling insults. Let her try to salvage her pride. My eyes drifted to the corner of the bedroom, where my old college trophies sat gathering dust. Some part of me remembered a younger self, full of dreams of a stable, loving family. That was all behind me now. By the time I finished packing, she was slumped on the edge of the bed, tears streaking her red face, eyes hollow with panic. I stood in the doorway, my suitcase in hand. My voice was calm but cold. "I'm leaving you with 2 words. Goodbye. Forever." The echo of those words in my own ears startled me. She looked up as if I'd slapped her. I just nodded, turned, and walked out. I drove endlessly for what felt like an eternity, the city lights blurring in the rearview mirror. My chest was tight, and I remember thinking over and over, like a mantra, cold is also an emotion. Because if I didn't keep that in mind, I might have broken down. The worst part was the comparison that kept creeping into my head. Images of her with him. My mind conjured up 1,000 humiliating scenarios. Them in bed, on a couch, in a hotel. The curve of her lips, the softness of her body, the raw intimacy I used to take for granted, now shared with someone else. Someone younger, more exciting, more whatever. It tore me inside. But I didn't scream or cry. I just clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles ached and pressed on through the quiet streets. I ended up in a motel on the outskirts. The neon sign glowed a sickly yellow, lighting up the empty parking lot. In the room, the single lamp had a blue shade that cast everything in a cold hue. It reminded me of the phone's screen, that night I discovered her secret. I took a shaky breath, set my suitcase down, and sat on the edge of the stiff mattress. The silence was heavy, pressing in on me from all sides. Eventually, I lay back, stared at the stained ceiling, and pictured her face when she realized the finality of my actions. I'd blocked her cards. She'd have to scramble to figure out her finances. She'd lose the comfort she'd grown used to, the stable net I'd provided. Maybe she'd ask her lover for help. Maybe he'd step up, or maybe he'd vanish once the drama got too real. I almost wished he'd vanish, leaving her with nothing. A wave of bitterness rolled through me, but behind it, I felt an odd twinge of pity. She'd thrown away everything we had. Why? I spent the next few days in that motel, contacting a lawyer, setting up my strategy for a divorce. I wanted it clean, quick and brutal. She tried calling me, but her calls never connected. She tried sending emails. I blocked her address. She tried to reach out to me through friends, but I told them the basics. She had an affair. I ended it. Some friends were shocked, some supportive, some uncertain. But I said the same line to all of them. I won't discuss it further. She must have realized by then how thoroughly I'd closed the door. She tried once to come see me at work, but security turned her away at my request. From a distance, I saw her standing outside the glass doors, her coat clutched around her, a thin figure overshadowed by the tall buildings. She looked so small, so unlike the bright woman I'd married. But again, I felt only that glacial calm. She'd made her choice. It was over. I worked, day after day, keeping my mind occupied with numbers and client meetings. My coworkers asked if everything was all right. Apparently, I looked different, quieter, though I'd never been much of a talker. I told them I was fine. Just a small crisis at home. It's handled. They didn't pry. Then one afternoon, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up, expecting maybe a new client. Instead, a male voice said, "Hey, I'm looking for John. This is Mark." He paused, as if uncertain. I think we should talk." I froze. Mark. The man from the note. The man in those pictures. My mind reeled, imagining the audacity it took for him to call me. Part of me wanted to slam the phone down, but a dark curiosity made me stay on the line. "Talk," I said, my voice low. He hesitated. "Look, man, Kate's losing it. She said you blocked everything, cut her off. She can't even get her car to start because you took the key or something." He spoke like I owed him an explanation. Can we meet? I need to figure out how we can fix this. She's in a really bad place." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "We? You and me? Do you even hear yourself?" He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I get that you're angry. She said you found out about us. But she's not well. I don't want her to do something drastic." I clutched the phone tighter, a surge of contradictory emotions swirling. Fury that he had the nerve to speak to me about her, worry that maybe she was truly desperate. But then I recalled the images, her moans, the text messages. My shoulders tensed. Whatever she does now is not my concern. She made her choice. I told him, "You want to help her? Then help her. Don't involve me." He tried to stammer something else, but I ended the call. Then I sat there at my desk, inhaling and exhaling slowly. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, but I declined the call. I didn't care what he had to say. He was younger, more charismatic, maybe, but that didn't make him a better man. She'd risked everything for him, and now he was faced with the aftermath of her meltdown. That was his burden. Mine was to rebuild my life from the rubble she left. When I returned to my motel that evening, the sky was a harsh, steel gray. I sat in the small, cramped space, the flicker of the neon sign outside painting my walls in waves of dull yellow, and then plunging them into gloom. My mind wouldn't quiet. Images of her, of them, kept intruding. But I forced myself to remember the final expression on her face. She had no regrets when she was with him. Her regret only came when she realized I'd discovered the truth and severed her comfort. The days passed in a numb monotony. I filed for divorce. She tried to delay it, claiming we could reconcile, but my lawyer assured me we had plenty of grounds for a swift settlement. People talk about heartbreak like it's a punch to the chest or a crushing weight. But for me, heartbreak manifested as quiet, methodical cruelty. I wanted no more illusions. I wanted her to vanish from my life, as if she'd never existed. And ironically, that same longing for separation was also fueled by how deeply she'd once mattered to me. On a particularly cold afternoon, blue shadows on the ground, a fierce wind howling through the city, I decided I needed to face her one last time. Tie up loose ends, as they say. I texted her from a new number, instructing her to meet me at a place we both knew, a small cafe near the corner of Lake Street. She responded with a simple yes. We planned it for early evening. I arrived first. The cafe almost empty. The overhead lighting was subdued, the windows letting in the final glow of daylight that flickered across the tables in pale gold. The place smelled of coffee beans and lingering pastry sweetness. It used to be one of our favorite spots. We come here on Saturday mornings, chat about our plans, dream about traveling. The memory cut me, but I refused to let it show. She came in, shoulders hunched against the cold, hair tucked under a knit cap. I was struck by how drawn she looked. Eyes rimmed with exhaustion, cheeks hollow. She spotted me at a corner table and slid onto the chair across from me. She tried a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said quietly. I studied her. I knew we had a decade of shared memories, but now it was like looking at a stranger. "You said you wanted to talk." She nodded, swallowing. I'm sorry, John. For everything. I know that doesn't fix it. But can't we at least talk about dividing things more fairly? You cut me off from everything. I can't even rent a place. I took a slow breath, tension coiled in my muscles. I left you enough for basics. There's still money in your personal checking. I didn't take that. My lawyer's preparing the official settlement. You'll have your portion, and then we'll be done. I looked at her, let the weight of my stare sink in. Is that not enough? She lowered her gaze, fiddling with her glove. I guess it is. John, I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked, and tears glistened in her eyes. I was selfish, I admitted. I felt trapped, and Mark was like an escape. I never wanted to lose you. Not like this. I forced a cold laugh. You wanted the illusion of security while tasting something else on the side. That's all it was. Don't sugarcoat it. Silence. She pressed her lips together, tears threatening to spill. For a moment, the rawness in her face made me feel something, an ache I thought I'd buried. But I remembered the photos, the phone, the humiliating sense of being replaced by someone younger, more adventurous. The pang hardened into ice again. She reached across the table as if to touch my hand, but I pulled away. You humiliated me, I said softly, mindful of the other customers. My voice trembled despite my best efforts. You lied to me, used me, threw away what we had. And now you want me to bail you out with a friendly chat. A tear slipped down her cheek. No, she whispered. I want you to know I'm sorry. Her face contorted. If I could turn back time. You can't. I cut in. And even if you could, you probably wouldn't. Her lower lip trembled. But I couldn't muster pity. I stared at the darkening sky through the window, faint lines of gold fading to gray. This is the last time we talk like this. Understood. She slowly nodded. What if I need to reach you? There's the divorce, the details. My lawyer, I said. Talk to him. I rose to leave. She tried to speak again, but no sound came out. Her eyes followed me as I walked past the few patrons sipping their coffee. I felt that old, familiar hush envelop me. I stepped out into the cold wind, ignoring the sting on my face, ignoring the pang in my chest. A swirl of half-melted snow danced at the curb. I realized I was free. The bitterness was still there, but for the first time, I also felt a sliver of relief. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I had my own path to walk, one that no longer included her. Over the next couple of weeks, the settlement rolled forward. Documents were signed. Accounts were divided. She got a fraction of what she might have gotten if she'd fought me tooth and nail, but I think the guilt or the shock had drained her fight. Mark, from what I heard, tried to stay with her, but rumors said he found her meltdown too much to handle. She ended up on her own, living in a small apartment downtown, scraping by on freelance event jobs. I didn't care. I'd severed that part of my life. Time passed. The divorce was final. People said I should celebrate, but I couldn't bring myself to. There was no joy in that outcome for me, just a sense of necessity. The quiet I felt was no longer the hush of something broken, but the hush of aftermath. Some nights I wondered if I'd made the right choices, if perhaps I'd let my rage shape the cruelty. But then I'd remember the pain of seeing those photos, of realizing the woman who once promised to grow old with me was letting a stranger share her bed. And I'd feel that cold again, a reminder that certain betrayals cut too deep for easy forgiveness. I found a new place to live, a modest apartment on the north side. The building is older, but the rent is reasonable, and the view of the city skyline at night has a certain somber beauty to it. On evenings when I get home from work, I sometimes stand by the window, the lights of Chicago glinting like distant stars, and I think about how small we all are, how fleeting. I don't feel pity or longing anymore. I just feel the quiet. That hush. Like a scar that's done bleeding but still aches when I press it. I never saw her again in person. Our final words had been in that cafe. Through the lawyers, she tried once or twice to adjust something, but I didn't budge. She had to live with it. As for Mark, I never met him, never wanted to. He was just a face in those pictures, a name on that note. The man who destroyed something that was already cracking. If it hadn't been him, maybe it would have been someone else. Sometimes people ask me if I'll ever trust again. I don't have an answer for them. All I know is that for now, I live quietly. I keep to myself. I work, I eat, I sleep, I manage. My father once told me, there's a certain dignity in controlled silence. Maybe this is what I've embraced. A life that moves forward in subdued, measured steps. One evening, I was sorting through old boxes I'd finally retrieved from storage. Among them, I found the ring box from our wedding day and the leftover programs from the ceremony. They'd yellowed slightly with time. My breath caught for a moment, remembering her laugh in that white dress, but the memory felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life. I placed the ring box aside. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away just yet, but I also couldn't bear to keep it near. It ended up in a drawer I rarely open. Sometimes in the quiet, when the city's hum outside my window lulls me, I think about how simple the final words were. Goodbye. Forever. She never truly understood why I did it, or maybe she did, but was too consumed by her own regrets. People say forgiveness is a virtue, but for me, that concept seems naive. I don't believe I owe her forgiveness. She never asked for a real chance to fix us, only for a chance to keep her illusions alive. I guess illusions are seductive like that, promising that we can have everything: adventure, security, novelty, stability, without paying a price. But the price always comes. On the rare night I allow myself a glass of whiskey, I remember the moment she took those Super Bowl tickets. The gall of it. The brazen assumption that I'd just accept it. That was the instant I realized I'd lost her, or she'd lost me. And ironically, that was also when I understood the nature of my own silence. It wasn't weakness. It was the calm before I took everything from her that I could. For a man who's given so much, time, care, love, revenge can be cold, steady, and unstoppable once you reach that tipping point. I know some people might say I went too far. Others might say I didn't go far enough. But in the end, I did what I had to. She experienced life without my support, without my resources, forced to face the ramifications of her choices. And I learned something about myself, that I could be both heartbreakingly hurt and icily controlled at the same time. A living testament to the fact that cold is also an emotion. Occasionally, I get updates through mutual acquaintances, how she's trying to rebuild, how she regrets it all, how she can't understand why I never gave her a second chance. I listen with a neutral face, give a polite nod. But inside, it doesn't stir me. I've accepted that sometimes final means final. There is no second chance. There is no undone betrayal. This is my life now. Quiet. Determined. Mornings start with coffee. Nights end with the city's lights. When I see a couple laughing on the street or sharing an umbrella, I feel a faint pang of something. Maybe envy, maybe longing. But it's fleeting. People cheat, trust shatters, and illusions come at a cost. That's the lesson I carry. I suppose it's enough. All that remains is the echo of that last day in our shared home. Her voice trembling, her eyes full of confusion, me telling her I was leaving. Suitcase in hand, stepping out the door without a backward glance. She never saw how my hand shook until I reached the car. She never saw the tears I refused to let fall. And she never will. Because for us, goodbye. Forever truly meant there was no return, no fresh start. I cut her out of my life so completely that sometimes, in my calmer hours, I question if I cut out a part of myself as well. But that's how it had to be. Love can't survive in a nest of lies, and respect can't grow in a field of betrayal. If I learned anything from this, it's that silence doesn't always mean weakness. It can be the quiet steel of a man who knows exactly what's been taken from him, and exactly what he needs to do in return. And maybe that's the final note of my story. Eto ved nichigo ni snatchet. The phrase I once heard from her grandmother, the phrase that felt so hollow when I found that piece of paper in her bag. It meant everything. It meant my life would never be the same. And in the end, that's the only truth left standing when the lies fall away.